Hello, and happy Black History Month from all of us here at the Virtual Doll Convention. I want to sort of go through a catalog of the history of Black Barbie and Black dolls in the brand over the course of her existence, which tragically is not all that long. So I want to talk about that sort of span of time and all of the sort of elements that entails. I will start by addressing the elephant in the room that although I don't think I am a poor resource to work with this video today, that there are certainly more apt and better resources for you, the audience, the viewer, to learn from and indulge. So I empower you, the audience, to go do that research and find other publications and creators that have done the cataloging and really have a thorough, video for you, or book or whatever. And regrettably, on the topic of books, I did quite a bit of surfing through lots of different books, and there's not actually a lot of material on Black dolls, which I suppose is not all that surprising, but disheartening anyway. So I hope that this is informative, and I hope that this is entertaining a little bit, maybe, and please do not consider this fully comprehensive, but rather a place to start, and if nothing else, a great thing to put on in the background while you judge me and brew coffee. I want to start at the top of Barbie's history, well, Black Barbie's history. Mattel Black doll history. Let's do that, because it didn't start actually with Barbie. The first Black doll is, often misunderstood to be Christie, and she is technically the first, Barbie body doll in a black complexion, but she's actually not the first one. Francie, Barbie's cousin, strangely enough, is the very first Mattel Black doll. And at the time, Mattel had a sort of, regimented canon for Barbie's family. There was Barbie, and there was her sister, and her boyfriend, and her best friend, and that was it. And then we get her cousin in the 60s, and she's the mod one from England. And she is sort of this opportunity for Mattel to branch into a different aesthetic for Barbie without fully denouncing what they had done for her up to that point. This was a chance for them to get a foothold into a new trend and feel like they were gauging an audience and relevant and experimenting. And so to me, it makes sense, unfortunately, that they would be sort of playing guinea pig with a different blend of vinyl complexion with Francie. So the first one is 1967 Francie, and she's the exact same doll as Francie. She's the same sculpt, she's the same hairdo, she's just not white. And so she debuts, and interestingly, she doesn't do very well. She's not a hot seller, and people aren't, ravenously buying this doll off the shelves. And so it leads her now to being a sort of sought-after kind of rare doll because it wasn't produced a whole lot. And I think it's worth noting why it might be that for vintage, produced dolls produced of yesteryear, why black ones in particular are rare, and if that could have anything to do with being undesirable. I will allow other creators and other publications to take the reins from here from me, but I will say that I just want to make it clear that I don't actually have a huge collection of black dolls, regrettably. I would like more of them, but I have been enlightened to several perspectives from other creators that is, collect the things that are representative of you, and if somebody else didn't have the same opportunities, via, even just ratio of produced product, allow those people the chance to collect the things that look like them. So maybe for something that's not especially rare, I can dip my toes in, but without further ado, let's get into the lineup. So we have Francie is our first one. She is issued with a twist and turn waist. She's got that classic flip. I don't think she exists, but I wish if there were a no bangs Black Francie, that would be transcendent. That would break the internet. No bangs Francie is the only one that I really have interest in collecting, of course. I would want the most, annoying, sought after, sort of rare version of Francie. I'm not a huge Francie fan, but I love her clothing. Her wardrobe is one of the best. And she's very beautiful. She is a collector fan favorite for, obvious reasons, but she was one that was produced, very rarely. And I think Mattel used her as a sort of guinea pig to see if this experiment of inclusivity would be profitable, if this would be a successful endeavor in, you know, securing capitalism. And it didn't actually do very well. So on the coattails of her, like, tepid failure, 1968 is the debut of the TV show Julia, featuring Diahann Carroll. And this show was a runaway success. It was, you know, claimed as a hit pretty much unanimously. And there are criticisms of it and critiques of the show, but I think sort of prescient at a time, you know, I will also allow the audience to do the math as far as like what's going on in culture at the time. I trust that I don't need to tell you what was going on in the 60s with racial justice. But if you look at the timeline, I'm not going to sit here and claim that, you know, Mattel was ever trying to be progressive, but in that light, I think you could say this might be a little bit late. So with the success of the show, there was also, maybe in lifetime, but also in hindsight, there's been, you know, scholarly, you know, revisiting of this show and its impact and how that is reflected. I want to look at an article written for the Smithsonian by Alice George that sort of goes back and talks about Julia's impact and maybe how it was actually received. So, when Julia premiered in September of '68, millions of Americans welcomed her small family into their living rooms. The show was an instant hit and won Carroll the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Comedy in its first season. Squarely situated at an intersection between popular culture and racial politics, Julia became a beachhead for critics who insisted that television should not rather sacrifice African American authenticity to win viewers. And I thought that was such a poignant point to make, that there is a palatability that is necessary for consumers to buy this doll. And if racism is at play and you are trying to navigate that with your customer basis, who are the ones that have money? Who is keeping your lights on? Is this a profitable doll? These are interesting questions to ask, right? And then, like, why is it that Julia was popular or wasn't? Battered by criticism about the show's opulent feel and faced with the daunting task of representing her entire race, the star's show, Diahann Carroll, struggled for greater realism. She says, "For 100 years, we've been prevented from seeing accurate images of ourselves." And I think, you know, in some way it's a little bit like, let's take what we can get, tragically. Like, I want to sort of immerse myself in the pop culture moment of the 60s and imagine, you know, it was very different stakes. It was a much different experience. And she also talks about her own ability to get acting gigs as a Black woman, as opposed to the opportunities presented to Black male actors, and the very true reality of that, and what can she do with that opportunity. Ultimately, plot lines revolved around middle-class family life, not the plight of African Americans. So there is something to be said about making both the show and the doll desirable for the widest audience possible. that's not ITE. that's, you know, it's both a Caucasian and an African American demographic. How do you make this character both authentic and relatable to the very people she is trying to represent, while also accessing someone that has decided, they've made up their mind, she has no place in their home. So 1968, the show comes out, it does very well, and I think there's a chance that Mattel looked at their, you know, the year prior and their, you know, experiment and thought, well, maybe we revisit that again, and maybe we move from a very strange experiment with Francie to an actual character for Barbie, a new person that exists in the universe of Barbie. So Talking Christie and Twist and Turn Christie come out at the same time. That's 1968, and she is so cute. She's got this like beautiful bouffant little hairdo. It's disputed among collectors whether or not the hair color of Julia was a matter of oxidization over time, or if that was like different releases of dolls, and it might actually be a little bit of both. So the first issue dolls tend to have a sort of oxidized to red, little cropped, you know, pixie hairdo, and it's like, it's red. And then the later issue was, you know, the rumor is that it was, you know, amended, that this sort of error in the material of the hair was then sort of fixed so that it wouldn't do that. She's really cute. She's got her, you know, her drawstring in her back that has whatever it is, half a dozen or more sort of slogans or catchphrases, and you know, I'm called Christie. She's very cute. And then after Christie comes out, we go back to Julia. And Julia is actually the same doll. It's the same sculpt as Christie. But I think this is then the moment in Mattel's sort of cogs turning, thinking about, well, now let's jump on this. If Mattel wants to be, as a brand, as a project, reflecting what's happening in lifetime, in culture and in society, and being a mirror for what's going on, we, Mattel, need to be in on this. We need to be involved in this change. And so with the success of the show, they produce Julia the doll. And so she comes in a little nurse outfit, the same sculpt, but she's got a slightly different face. She's got little, you know, a nice little pitched eyebrow, something that's a little bit more arched and out. So 1970 introduces the Malibu Barbie, and more specifically, it's the very wittily named, is that a word? Do people use the word witty that way? It's a witty play on words. The Sunset collection. And the Sunset initially consists of Barbie and Skipper and Ken and PJ. And all of the advertising, which I can show you here, is all depicted with images of the sunset, and it's really hard to find any advertising, any catalogs, anything that shows the sunset with Christie. She's just not in there. So again, sort of telling of what's going on in the culture. 1970 introduces the Sunset Malibu Christie, and she's very rare. Not many of them were made, but she features the Julia Christie sculpt, the original Christie, and she's gorgeous. She's got a beautiful little red swimsuit, and interestingly, this doll and Christie and her subsequent boyfriends and, you know, iterations of Christie following later would actually be produced initially with one color vinyl mixed for the complexion. And as time went on, the next year, say that she's released in 71 introduces a deeper complexion, which I find really interesting. And that's consistent for most of the dolls. This has nothing to do with her, you know, sun tanning because she's a Malibu doll, but it's something to note that over time they decide to make each of the dolls deeper in complexion. And 1970 also introduces Brad, her first boyfriend. So in light of, I suppose, Diane Carroll's previous comment about, can she get a male counterpart on the show because acting doesn't necessarily provide those opportunities to her male counterparts, what does dating for a widowed character like Diane Carroll offer? And similarly, what is dating for Julia like? How do you depict a black man for children to play with in a way that combats all of the context of racism happening at the time? I don't actually think that's a very tall order, but I think if you're in your head about it, it seems that way. Brad is released both as a talking version and with bendable legs, the same way that Christie is. And he's really cute. I love his sculpt. He's got these beautiful cheekbones and this like nice little cropped hairdo. 1971, this is live action Christie. The live action gang is introduced, and you've got Barbie and PJ and Ken, and their whole shtick is that they are like, you know, performers, they're musicians, they're doing something on stage, they've got instruments or whatever, and they just jiggle. Like the dolls are designed in a way that they just sort of like vibrate when you roll them around. And this features the first Christie with a Midge sculpt, actually. So the face that is used for Midge and then is sort of readapted for PJ is used for the first time and called Christie with this set, and I believe it's the last time. I don't think it happens again. And she's gorgeous, you guys. She's got rooted lashes and like orange lipstick. This is a Grail doll. She's so beautiful. But again, she's sort of gypped on the bill when you are looking at any marketing, any campaigns or advertising. You've got like the fashion booklet that comes with Barbie when you buy a new doll, and like on the cover, you see Ken and Barbie and PJ for, you know, the live action set, and then there's just no Christie. She's just cut out. And I find this like consistent pattern so telling and so devastating, but that is all to say that like doing the research on this was, you know, a journey. And so thank you for, you know, joining me. I hope that if anything, this inspires you to do your own research and find more things that I couldn't, because it's sparse out there. It's not easy to find these things. Anyway, here are photos of live action Christie. She's so gorgeous. She's got this nice long sort of middle parted black hair that trails down to her shoulders. Now that I've lost my place, she's really gorgeous. She's got this like headscarf and a paisley printed like purple like two-piece jumper. It's adorable. I love her. She is one that in box costs a fortune. 1973 introduces the first aspect for beauty care and hair play for Christie, and it was really important to me that this like topic of doll play got into this video regarding Black history and regarding Christie. Hair is a contentious issue, and hair is a large issue with context and history and opinions and individuality, and so I wanted to make sure that like whatever representation there was for her, although, you know, not always ideal, made it into the video. And at the time, you're looking at all of these gimmicks that Mattel is throwing out and playing with. 1970 and 71, we bring Grow and Pretty Hair Barbie, one of my absolute favorites, and Grow and Pretty Hair Francie into the mix. So Mattel is realizing that like hair play matters to kids, it's sellable, it's whatever, and we, you know, tellingly, we don't get any of that for Christie. The first thing I could find that introduced that aspect of play for her was the beauty center. So you've got the bust that has her little pocket in front of her for her like barrettes and her eyeshadow and whatever, and then she's got her hair and she's just like waiting for you to do whatever. But she's rather the first version of that I could find. And another interesting note on her is that this is I think the only instance I could find of Christie being called Christie using a Barbie face sculpt in her complexion. And granted, it's blown up to just about people scale, so it doesn't translate quite the same way, but it's the same face that they use on the Barbie version of the beauty center. It's that same mod sculpt with her like open mouth and big doe eyes and lashes, and she's so beautiful. And it makes me mourn all of the Black Barbie dolls that we didn't have for both the early and mid 60s, obviously, but the late 60s, like the mod dolls, that Barbie face in Christie's complexion would have been a knockout. Like, you could probably fill your kitchen sink up with a bottle of Rit and do it yourself and dye your own, TLC twist and turn. But I think of all of the dolls that could have been and am sad by that. And clearly I'm not inventing this opinion. Somebody else has gotten there before I have. But at any rate, I thought it was so beautiful to see her face. You can see it here with Barbie's sculpt. It's a beautiful sculpt, and we should have used it more often. So I will avoid going into the long-winded history of just Malibu Barbie, because there are many of them. She has many different swimsuits and many different, even complexions and many different faces. But speaking of faces, I want to talk about what is maybe one of my favorite ones, and it is what's known now as the Stephy sculpt, but was introduced for the first time in 1975 for a black doll named Cara. And Cara comes on the scene and takes my breath away. She's so beautiful. Like, if I could have just a collection of Cara, I would. The first one, I believe, is free moving, but it could have been quick curl, I don't know. They came out very nearly at the same time. And the face is just so pretty. I don't know, like, the Steffi sculpt is everyone's favorite, or many people's favorite for a reason. She's just got this beautiful face. She's got this sort of like, just about ready to say something, half open mouth, and beautiful eyes, and a button nose, and full lips. She's gorgeous. And those dolls are pretty. The Cara dolls, the first Cara dolls are pretty, but like the presentation of the doll itself, for me, is kind of simple. It's a little lackluster. They are still sought after, desirable, very expensive dolls. But the one that really like stops me dead in my tracks is Ballerina Cara. Ballerina Cara is the epitome of Barbie. She is in a pink tutu, which Barbie didn't get. Barbie gets a boring white one. Cara gets the pink tutu, and she's got this just angelic face. It's the same doll. She comes with the same sort of kicking gimmick and the same bouquet and, tiara, but she's so breathtaking. And like, I think if I had a Ballerina Cara, it would be the sort of thing where you're distracted while you're driving because you're on your phone, like, I would be constantly looking at Cara, trying to do everything else around me, burning my dinner and, like, you know, tying my shoes together because I'm not paying attention because, like, I've got ballerina Cara and she's so beautiful. I love that doll. And I think there was a short-lived sort of thing for Cara. I think she, like, with the name Cara was concluded in, like, 77. And then they would go on to use the Stephy sculpt or the Cara face again and call her Christie in the future. But that doll truly, like, just appreciate her. she's so beautiful. Ballerina Cara is my favorite thing. And in 1978, we get Kissing Christie, who again is one of my favorites. She's so beautiful. She again uses the Steffi sculpt, but to me, very effectively on the bizarre contraption that is Kissing Barbie. We've talked before, actually, this time about last year, about Kissing Barbie, and she remains one of my favorites. But the Barbie head on her is like, it's not right. She looks not well. She looks like she's halfway through a vacuum hose. She's just, you know, she doesn't look right. But the Kissing Christie, that face, that Steffi sculpt on her with the, you know, the gimmick of kissing is very effective. She looks so beautiful. And she features the same sort of dress that Barbie wears, but in a different color. This has like a nice, like, tangerine, sherbety, orangey, peachy. It's very, very pretty. And it flatters her so nicely. She's just got this cloud of curly hair and these, like, piercing eyes. And I love a doll with a gimmick, I really do. And the kissing one is, you know, no exception. But I love that doll with the Steffi sculpt. What can I say? She's my favorite. 1979 introduces another one of my must-haves. Beauty Secrets Barbie is so beautiful. But tragically, this doll is not yet referred to using the name Barbie. Ironically, this features Christie with the Superstar sculpt. So in 77, when we get Superstar Barbie, and she's got the big boa and the classic pink, and she's, you know, ready for action, we start to see that face really gain popularity because, like, it's so wonderful. It continues to be one of the best sculpts they've ever put out. R.I.P. the Superstar sculpt. It's still so good. But they didn't really use it for other dolls with other names. Later they would use the Superstar sculpt and call it Barbie on a black doll, but that would be years and years away. Beauty Secrets Christie features that Superstar sculpt. It's so pretty on her, and it's interesting to me that that was used that way in that year before sort of the major change that would come in 1980, which we'll talk about. But Beauty Secrets features a sort of interesting hairdo. This is one particular doll, even like mint in box, that is not especially expensive or valuable. And I think it has something to do with her sort of off-putting mullet. It's a choice for Beauty Secrets Christie, so we can see her here. She's got this sort of, it's the same haircut I think as like the first Happy Birthday Barbie. I think that was 1980 or 81. She's got this sort of like what would otherwise be a like pretty halo of bubble curls, but then it has this long fall that's like sewn in. It's not good. It's dark-sided. And so anyway, I love the gimmick of the doll, right? There's a button in her back, same as Barbie, that features a sort of pulling mechanism in her shoulder. So if you want to, you know, have her use a powder puff, it sort of like slaps herself, or she can, like, you know, use a hair dryer. It's really endearing. And as someone who was always infatuated by, you know, beauty products and that industry, like the beauty industry, was always something that really was just enrapturing to me. This doll would have eviscerated me as a kid. I would have just been really down for the count. She's beautiful. The face is beautiful. The hair could use some help, but she's a good one. 1980 introduces one of the biggest events for Barbie, and that is Black Barbie. She's quite simply just Barbie, but she's black for the very first time, and this doll really changed everything. And you can see it here. I've got photos, but one of the parts on the box, the advertising on this I really, really love, says, "She's black!" exclamation point. She's beautiful, and she's dynamite. And I think that's such a beautiful, simple sentiment that communicates exactly what you need to know. Nothing's changed. She's just Barbie, but she's Black Barbie because she's not for you. She's for somebody else. And I find that so wonderful, and again, so overdue. The fact that, like, the first experiment was over a decade prior, right? And even that at the time was so late in the game. To have 1980 be the year where things change and representation finally gets somewhere for this, you know, company, for this project, is really incredible. And again, she's gorgeous. So this features the Stephy sculpt, that beautiful full mouth, and this sort of like nice cropped little curly hairdo, and a beautiful red statement sort of sheath with, you know, big beautiful gold jewelry. She's been done and redone and reproduced and made anniversaries of several times for good reason. This is a fan favorite without question, and is one that collectors are often, you know, wringing their hands to get in their collections. She's gorgeous. She's a must for any Barbie collector, and someday. And then we introduce Golden Dream Christie. Again, we're on the same train with the Stephy sculpt. This doll is a knockout. She's got this gorgeous, again, similar outfit to Golden Dream Barbie, but in a more sort of flattering amber color. It's this beautiful gilded, ambery, coppery, gorgeous metallic jumpsuit with the same sort of cape slash shawl slash skirt you can wear 100 ways. And she's got these beautiful highlights, and it really sort of shows beauty trends at the time and you know, the way of diversity and inclusion in the 80s. I don't think that it was always executed perfectly, but you can kind of see where the intention was. So to give Christie, again, in the same way as like the Kissing Christie, to give the doll the same dress but in like a different color feels a little bit to me now in hindsight like, well, let's give you something that is specific and unique to you, but, you know, not in any sort of sincere way. It's just a matter of color. And same thing for Golden Dream. It suits her beautifully. It's more flattering, but it's sort of interesting to note that like all of these garments, beauty secrets, they're the same garments just done in a different shade that might like complement her better. And I wonder if it wouldn't have been more effective or more interesting or more engaging to have given her her own garment, you know, something that really distinguished her in the line and made her feel like a collector piece outside of being just diverse, you know what I mean? But she's really beautiful, and I don't actually know. There have been rumors circulating for ages about a reproduction of this doll either coming, or like she's just been confirmed, or I don't know, there's something going on with Golden Dream Christie. I'm only so in the loop for like what's happening right now, but that is one that would tempt me to purchase. I don't do a ton of repros, but she might be one. So I'm gonna go back on a word that I said earlier about not revisiting every Malibu Barbie, and I'm not gonna do that. But I did want to notice, or make note of rather, something I found really interesting in my research of this. And I think this feels later than I think it is. I don't know what year this is anymore. I think I've crossed my wires. But anyway, sensational Malibu dolls were issued with Barbie and Ken and PJ, and then you've got Skipper, and then you've got Christie. But interestingly, there's white Barbie, black Christie, and then there's black Ken. And at the time, we'd already sort of established like Christie has her own weird, you know, boyfriend because she like, I guess, can't date white guys or something. We have, Steven would come later, but we've got Brad and, oh, what's his name? There's another one in 75. Anyway, I found Sensational Malibu Ken came as a black doll, and not only that, but he came in 2 different variations, and one of them has a rooted afro, which is so cool to me. Just like kind of a standard playline doll that comes in only swim trunks is given this sort of variant with sculpted hair and rooted hair, and he's very cute, so we can show photos here. I think he's a real knockout, and I don't know if they both come with sunglasses, but the rooted hair, it really like, him with glasses is so hot. He's very effective. We should give dolls more rooted hair more often, particularly black fros. That's very, very good. And then as a side note, I guess, Sensational Malibu Christie comes with both what was then used as the Hispanic, or I think it's called the Spanish sculpt, and the Steffi sculpt. So you get like a variation for both. I guess they were just using whatever parts they had at the time. 1981 is Pink and Pretty Barbie and Pink and Pretty Christie, and I do find it interesting that like post 1980 and post Black Barbie, using that name, using that language, we are still distinguishing Barbie from Christie, and we're not necessarily offering Black Barbie, Pink and Pretty Barbie, and then Black Christie. Instead, it has to be distinct, and I just find that sort of interesting. I do love this doll. Pink and Pretty Barbie, Pink and Pretty Christie are gorgeous. I mean, it's in the name. She just has this beautiful pink wear it 100 ways ensemble covered in little foil dots that look like sparkles. Christie's pretty. She's got the Steffi sculpt, and she's got a little bit of variation for face paint, so some of them have like a deeper sort of muted neutral nude color lip, and then others have this like really nice hot pink, or like a bubblegum pink, and those are, of course, I always want the like outrageous hooker makeup. It's so pretty. She's beautiful. And Inbox again is a fan favorite. But I find that sort of toggling between Barbie versus Christie versus Barbie throughout the sort of years to be very attention grabbing. It's intriguing to me. And then in 1982 we go back and revisit the beauty industry again, and we get hair play all over again. And this introduces Quick Magic Curl Barbie. Yeah, Magic Curl Barbie. And this is, to my previous point, interesting in that it gives you white Barbie and black Barbie. There's no Christie, so clearly we are, you know, trying to play with any option, any opportunity for, you know, distinguishing this character. But her whole gimmick is that she's got curly hair that you can like chemically straighten and then like recurl again. And I wonder if at all there was a point in this doll's inception where it was initially pitched as a black Barbie doll, and then they adapted a version for white Barbie, because this doesn't necessarily feel, I mean, like, the hairstyle that you start with for the white doll as well is like just a big cloud of hair. It's just a big curly, it sort of looks like an afro. And on Christie, or on Barbie rather, Black Barbie, it's beautiful. It looks appropriate on her, and it's a little off color and a little strange on white Barbie. But, you know, again, the magic of hair play is something that always sells, and it would have gotten my attention as a kid. The chance to curl and straighten and curl endlessly. I can imagine sitting in my room for hours at a time doing nothing else. That would have been very, very fun. You might recognize the next one from the ending credits of the Barbie movie. We've got Day to Night Barbie, which is an icon, but the less popular or less better known is the black version of the doll, and she is Barbie, but she features the Spanish sculpt that we saw earlier from Sensational Malibu Dolls, and she's beautiful. She's got the same sort of gimmick that the white doll does, in that she sort of is delivered to you in her like business casual, you know, single-breasted little pink blazer, and her sort of boater, and her little pumps, and her pencil skirt, and then all of that transforms into like a beautiful little sparkly spaghetti strap with a nice big full tulle skirt for her date with Ken. It is now, I think, in the canon of like the most quintessential concept idea of Barbie, that if you think about Barbie, she's the girl that can do anything, any time of day, wearing anything, except of course she will be always in heels. And I think this doll is one that very effectively sort of lands the sort of, I don't know, effort for diversity to just like be a like silently understood effective thing, and not like a giant endeavor or a reach for something for permission perhaps. This in some way feels a little bit like the beginning of, this is just the way things are, and this is just the way life is, and there's nothing to report here. Move on, take a picture, it'll last longer, I'm just Barbie. And that's kind of fun to me. Now, the next one is such an enormous can of worms that I'm going to let somebody else cover the whole thing. Certainly there are videos on God's internet somewhere for you to kill brain cells on that will more in full depth talk about Shani. And Shani is a big deal. Shani is 1991, releases the Shani collection. It's a diversion from the brand of Barbie, but it's all the same stuff. It's the same bodies, it's all Mattel, but it sort of rebrands a separate, dedicated faction of doll play and representation for Black imagination very deliberately. This is something that's done intentionally and with a design behind it and with heart and soul, and I know that it became a fan favorite. It was something that, as it sort of dwindled and was eventually cut, people continued to even still be sad about its end. Shani was a really beautiful doll line, and all of the costumes were such beautiful, vibrant jewel tones. I think, like, from a fashion perspective, it's just like enormous glittering ball gowns in like fuchsia. It's so beautiful. It's like, it's everything you think of in the silhouette of Barbie, but in something that's much more relatable for a Black demographic, and like feeling that representation. You don't have to sacrifice then the like sort of bombastic imaginative play. Instead, you get to indulge in something that's that even more acutely, for something that's more relatable for your lived experience. Like, that's so cool to me, and sad that maybe it didn't last longer. And I don't think anybody needs to ask why, you know? That's the sad part. That remains true. Why is it that she always gets the short end of the stick, you know? Questions. The next one is perhaps a blunder that I won't dwell on for a terribly long time, but 1991 also introduces Rap and Rockin' Barbie, which there are other videos on. She's not a disaster, she's just, you know, short-sighted. I think as a brand, it was not maybe their strongest move. And the collection features Rap and Rockin' Christie, but it feels like maybe the exact antithesis to, you know, Shani and the efforts to reach someone authentically. It feels a little bit off color, and that's all I'll say about that. 1992 features the very first run for president. And God, it's too bad we didn't get her this time. Barbie runs for president in 1992, both as a white doll and as a black doll. I think really important, again, that we prioritize in this collection, it's Barbie. It's not Christie, that's not a different doll. Black Barbie gets to run for president, and she gets to do it wearing a ball gown. And there are many, 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 many iterations of presidential campaign dolls over the next, you know, 2 decades. And each of them have a nice array of diversity. I don't think that there's a black doll included in every single release, but I think she's there for most of them. And what's so fun, I think, about that is, you know, anybody that's seen the movie understands that we have a black woman president in the film, and like, she's the only one. That's the president, and that is so cool to me. We can sort of, you know, touch on her again later, but the presidential run would include many a black doll. And the first one is sort of a silly one because it's just Barbie in like a red, white, and blue, you know, big, you know, cloud of a skirt, whereas the rest of her pieces would be more practical and more business wear and things you might actually wear if you were campaigning for president. But this one, I don't know, for 92, it's very in lieu with what Barbie was producing for all their other products at the time. And then in 1999, we get the one, the only Brandy. And Brandy is a superstar, sweeping the nation. She gets to act and sing and dance and be this icon that you look up on stage and enjoy and sort of project a future onto. And what is all of that if not doll play? And I think there's a really fun parallel there also between the kids of 99 and the kids of 68 looking up on their televisions and seeing something that looks like them. Speaking of fantastical celebrities, next on the list is second to none, which is funny because it's literally second to Brandy. 2005 features a collection that's been made for Destiny's Child, featuring none other than Beyonce. And these dolls are so pretty. They have several different iterations and fashions and whatever, but it felt necessary to include something like Beyonce in the lineup, who now, as of this, just won Album of the Year. Congratulations to Beyonce from the Grammys. I was hoping with this video to talk not only just about Barbie dolls and the history of black dolls in the collection and the brand, but also the reflection of culture and how that informed the dolls and how the dolls informed culture. And how that sort of became a little dance that we were, you know, both parties were doing. In some way, Beyonce naturally feels like the epitome of that. This true idol that little girls and little boys can project themselves onto and dream about being something half as talented as Beyonce. And doing so in their own hands, I think, is so, so cool. And again, in some ways, maybe not necessarily overdue, but again, I sort of mourn all of the opportunities for that had passed, you know, because we waited too long. So anyway, we have Brandy, we have Beyonce, we have Destiny's Child. And then a familiar face we've seen in the shop here before, 2007 introduces a really lovely collaboration between MAC Cosmetics and Barbie. And so here in studio with me today is my very own mannequin that was produced by Mattel. And this is in the sculpt of vintage Barbie. So this is the head that would have been used prior to any of this. This is prior to the first Black Francie. This is prior to Christie. This is the original vintage sculpt with her sort of lash ridge and her, you know, enormous forehead. It's still my favorite sculpt, and this is such a fun tease, similarly maybe to the beauty center that we had in '73 featuring Christie. I would have loved to see more of this doll in lifetime with this sculpt. It's cool to see her this way, and you know, now of course we've got silkstones and reproductions and things that use that vintage sculpt in a deeper complexion. It's interesting to chew on why that wasn't there. It's interesting to look back on what was accessible and possible and viable for a business endeavor in the 60s, and what was not worth it, and what was inflammatory, and what was what have you. This is a little slice of 2007 in a very sort of specific niche way. This would have been sold in department stores or MAC cosmetic flagship stores, where you would, you know, purchase the cosmetics and have it advertised to you on a mannequin looking like Barbie. So sort of a fun marketing idea. And then sort of following line with Shani, in 2009 we get a new collection of So In Style, or Sis, Barbie dolls, and this is a really fun collection. This sort of like revives the specificity that was necessary and brought success to Shani, but for an audience of 2009, and I think that ran through 2015. And this was also designed by Stacey McBride Irby, who worked under Kitty Black Perkins at Mattel. And Kitty Black Perkins was the one that designed Black Barbie. She was the one that said, this has to happen, this is necessary, she's dynamite. And fast forward all those years to 2009, Stacey comes into Mattel and has a new vision and a new idea and gets to work with Kitty directly, and would continue to work there for 15 years after that. She had a really huge impact on the brand. And these dolls, again, were a cast of all Black characters that featured wearable, day in, day out fashions, something that was playline but was accessible and representative of a particular audience and a particular imagination that didn't look white. It was something that was necessary because there wasn't enough of it. There wasn't any of it. There continues to be a shortage. And they didn't last a terribly long time, but doing the research into this collection, in hindsight, I actually think a lot of these looks would do really well, like right now. I think if we had access to this sort of collection or even like production of clothing again, it would be a hit. The style of the clothing fits right in with everything you see in, you know, the Playline dolls at Target today. So I think, you know, maybe since 2015, Mattel has done some really interesting things that I want to talk about for diversity and equity, and really making sure that representation was something earnest and authentic and not surface level and half-hearted. But this is another sort of really good example of what that looks like. And it's probably because it was spearheaded by somebody that looked like that little girl that didn't have a doll that looked like her. It's having the right person in the room at the table to say what's missing. And I understand the irony of me communicating that message to you now. Again, I don't claim to be the authority on any of this, but I do think it's important to acknowledge like where the gaps are and why they're there, and who has a better viability for filling in that gap than you might. That leads us to present. We've seen now a very long, sprawling, kind of confusing history of Black dolls within the Mattel universe, and in recent years they've started doing collections of inspiring women and figures in history that have made a large impact, and why they're important and how we got here. And in 2019, sort of a shoe-in sort of option, we get a Barbie for Rosa Parks. And again, like, it's so cool that we have a Rosa Parks doll. How incredibly overdue is that representation? Who's to say? Probably not a white person. But I think that she's a very obvious, hugely impactful addition to the collection for the universe of Barbie. And that also features dolls like in 2020 maybe? It's either 1 or 20 or 21. We get Maya Angelou, and that is again another like absolute must-have Black woman in the universe of Barbie. And beautifully, we also get a little bit of a further web of diversity and a further web of inclusivity with 2022. Laverne Cox gets a Barbie doll, and like that to me is like, that's revolutionary. That is truly so cool. I won't say that I don't think that the doll, they don't quite do her justice. I think we need to give Laverne Cox another issue, because the dress is not it, you guys, but the doll is gorgeous. And to have a Black trans woman represented with a Barbie doll is really important. I think it's impactful and important, not to just sound empty, but like I really mean that. I think it's really impactful and really important to have a Black trans woman represented in that way. This is the whole thing about like, who do you have access to imagining a future onto? Everybody deserves to project a future onto themselves. Everybody deserves to fantasize about who and what they can be someday. And there have been limits put on that, maybe intentionally and otherwise, for so long. And to have somebody like Laverne Cox get a Barbie doll is so profound. Like, it actually makes me a little bit emotional. I'm very grateful to be alive during a time where we can be doing things like Barbie production for Black trans women. And then we come back full circle to President Barbie from the movie, and I think it's just worth sitting with a Black woman president and the prospect of one, and how nobody is cut out of the room for dreaming, and nobody, well, I won't say that's actually true. Nobody should be cut out of the room for dreaming, and there are still lots of holes along the way that we can sort of fill and work with, but this is a really, really strong springboard. And something I think that's important to note that I've touched on in this is like, in Barbie's infancy, in the earliest iteration of this project, of this brand, Barbie was starting out seeking to be reflective of what was happening in Lifetime in culture. She was a vessel for fashion and culture of the 50s, of the 60s, and was not necessarily powerful enough to be in a position of influence. Well, all of these years later, there's no world where you could walk into the street and like mention Barbie and have somebody not understand or look at you with confusion. Everyone knows who Barbie is. There's no mistaking it. She's Barbie, and she's everywhere, and we love her. With all of that change, Barbie as a project, as a company, as a brand, now finds itself in a position to be influential on culture and not necessarily just reflective of it. I'm so excited to be around at a time to witness Mattel wielding that power with awareness, doing things like every shape, every size, every color Barbie. It's overdue and it's important, and now we are several years into that project, and it's so cool to see how that's been received. Now it's unblinking. People don't even flinch at the idea because it feels so natural, like it's in some way been there the whole time. It was missing for a very, very long time. But now that it's here, it feels like a familiar friend. And I'm glad to be around to see how that culture has changed. And I'm excited to see how that continues to mold and grow under chaos, under tumultuous political, socioeconomic circumstances. Things feel really uncertain, and I think things feel precarious in lots of ways. And we can continue to come back to an old familiar friend with Barbie and beg things of her. We can come to Barbie with questions and hard questions and uncertainty and say, help me, like, what would you do? How would you fix this? You're the woman that can do anything. And we actually can see that change in production with dolls. That begging, that yearning, that need is something that doesn't just fall you know, short or, you know, on deaf ears. You can use that energy, you can use that plea with Mattel, with pop culture, with musicians and artists and people in the world that are in charge of doing important things. Come to them with your plea, come to them with your begging to say, there's an issue. What can we change? How would you change this, Barbie? Can you save us, Barbie? And it feels good that in all of the hullabaloo and all of the uncertainty, there is Barbie to go to. I'm so grateful to Barbie. And I hope that this was not just, you know, one long, needless, long-winded ramble that, you know, was completely unnecessary. I hope that, if nothing else, this was entertaining, and from one sort of bubble-headed, ambitious, hopeful friend to another, I wish all of you, the audience, a very happy Black History Month. And in the meantime, go find other publications, go find other creators, go find other YouTube videos, go find other clubs that specialize in the history of Black Barbie, of Black dolls, and foster the community that we all need right now. We have more access to community on the internet today than we have ever had, so don't let it stop here. Please go run along, have fun, meet other new people, and wish all of them a very happy Black History Month. Bye.